let you know. Hi, so I'm Toey, she, her pronouns.
Hi, Toey.
Thank you, Chris, for being here, and thank you for running for office
Thank
and
you.
seeking the Riveters Collective endorsement. Welcome to your interview. Which we are conducting on the traditional territory of the Nooksack tribe and Lummi Nation. This interview is being recorded so that we can use it. Not all of us are here, so some of us will have to listen back to the recording for endorsement decisions, and it also may be shared publicly, possibly.
That's fine by me.
And your screen name looks great. So
Okay.
we have 5 questions, approximately 3 to 4 minutes each for these.
Okay.
And then hopefully that leaves us room at the end for any questions for us from you. And to begin, how would you like us to address you?
I'm a he, him pronouns, please.
Perfect. Thank you. And then we're each going to just introduce ourselves so you know who is here tonight. So
Great.
my name again is Toey, she, her, and Lychee.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Lychee Liang. Lychee is my first name, and I apologize for not being on camera. I don't have a camera on this device, but I did move to Bellingham from New York about 10 years ago. So I'll hand things over to Arlene.
Hi, my name is Arlene Feld, and I'm currently serving on the Incarceration Prevention Task Force. And my first question, well, I don't know, Sophie, did you introduce yourself? No.
No. Hi, my name's Sophia Ray. She, her. I am a senior at Seaholm High School.
Great.
Okay. So your first question is, what experience do you have as an administrator or an executive or an elected official that has prepared you to be the best candidate for this position?
Thank you for your question. That's a fantastic one. So most of my leadership experience, well, really, it started actually quite young in grade school, in middle school. Actually, I was part of the steering committee for the student body that did the grand opening of Bellingham High School. So pretty young, I got very drawn and felt compelled to find those leadership roles, to be a part of that collaborative process of planning and building community. And so that was sort of the earliest instance. Then throughout college, I was participated in student government in a couple of different ways at Whatcom Community College, at Western as well. And then after Western, I actually entered into the kind of more of the workforce, but actually as a small business owner. So I was planning to be a sustainable building advisor and was working in that field. And then my mother started having some cognitive issues. So I needed more flexibility to help her and then to also pursue something professionally, which led to me becoming a business owner. Now, that was something that started as just a small family business and then quickly escalated through just the quality of my products and kind of finding a trend that I think I give some credit to the fact that I studied economics at Western. That was my degree, and was able to identify that kombucha, of all things, was something that was very trendy when I started that company back in 2011. So that actually took off quite rapidly and then became a national brand within, it was about the 6-year timeline. I actually opened a full bar and restaurant as well in downtown Bellingham called the Culture Cafe. So most of my leadership and my administrative experience comes from being a small business owner. Having gone through all of the different modes of growth from small business all the way up to national business, even international business, doing some business in Canada as well as overseas, has really got me to where I've seen all the different layers and scales of interacting with different governmental agencies from local, state, federal, and international. And having experienced a lot of that growth, actually, I myself was having a hard time keeping up in my mid-20s when things were really accelerating. And so, I was managing dozens of employees and I really knew I needed more skills. And so I went, and my local bank, Savvy Bank, actually pushed me towards the Small Business Administration's Emerging Leaders Program. So that's something that was a Seattle cohort that I did in 2018. It was a 9-month process with other CEOs, founders, business employers that were looking for that development skill set and that executive skill set. So successfully graduated from that program, and then actually enjoyed it so much that one of the local county council members referred me to the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Executive Leader Program the following year. And so I did that as well, both of which are sort of kind of like professional MBA programs. And so that leadership has really enabled me to put on all the different departmental hats. And one of the main reasons I'm really compelled towards the position of mayor and feel called and prepared for that is that I have a lot of that executive experience. And it's something that I don't see as much in the other candidates or the existing administration. And being able to really look in and dig into the human resources element of the city, the financial planning element of the city, all of the regulatory issues, the legal issues are different areas where I can navigate that and really optimize the government. And so that's, to me, the best way that I can come in and add a lot of value and also provide a unique skill set, as the mayor really is sort of like the CEO of a town and less political than a lot of the other governmental positions. So I think that makes me very unique and skilled from the pure executive side of things. And that's some of my experience.
Yes, the city of Bellingham has very large unmet demand and need for mental health and substance abuse care and treatment. And it's a very large challenge facing the city. And as mayor, what will you do to address this need?
So even in my campaign and leading up to my decision to what impact can I really have? And is that something that's suiting to me in my career, my network, my calling? Really one of the biggest things is that I've got a 2 and a 4-year-old son in town. We live in Sunnyland. And to me, I want to make sure that this place is safe for them. And the more I see mental illness, drug use, crime, things like that everybody's seeing and is really becoming quickly overwhelming in our city, was a huge drawing factor to me feeling called to come and make a difference. And so I've been going to different community leaders around town and around the county as well, because it's more than just Bellingham proper that has this problem, and really digging into what are the sources of these problems. And it really seems that some of it's bigger factors like macroeconomics of the inflation, pandemic, things like that, but a lot of it is much more controllable than we think. And then I think that the local government is really done justice in supporting some of the local organizations that are working really hard and have great models to be able to help people that are having substance abuse issues, that don't have a place to live, that have mental health issues. And all of that really comes down to creating a community for those people in need that have less, that have been struggling in life, that don't have family to support them, that have made some mistakes, ended up in the criminal system. And so a couple of the cool organizations that I've really started to get to know with and build alliances with, the first was Homes Now. So Doug Gustafson there, who's the director of that program. They run some amazing tiny home villages that have incredible success rates at bringing people in that are experiencing those situations of homelessness, drug use, in getting kind of really led into or a lifestyle that's conducive to more consistent crime, and creating community around those people and giving them places to stay comfortably, giving them resources to clean up their lifestyle. And really it's that community element too, to make sure that they feel at home, to be able to make that really positive change in their life. So that's just one instance. That's a small 25 resident village that's actually chomping at the bit to find more space to do more of those, to help affect more people's lives. And they're having really no luck interfacing with the city on that element, to find new sites, to find the resources. They even have the resources. They have the money. They have the money. They can raise the money. They just need some help to find the space. So making sure, working with organizations like that, to make sure that they can get as much support from the government as possible to find more space to help create community around the people that are kind of stuck at the bottom, for lack of a better way to put it. I was just earlier today with the CEO of the Lighthouse Mission discussing some of their initiatives, their new facilities, some of their pain points. And they also have, experienced, they have this great set of resources and great team and great community engagement and a good amount of funding that comes from the private sector. It doesn't even come from the government. and they have a really hard time getting the government to help facilitate. A big part of it as well as the police force. We have a very understaffed police force because they're having a really hard time hiring. And so in that, it's something where those officers and the way that the city approaches it, and I do commend them. I've sat in on some of the task force that are trying to address that, and I think they're making some quality headway. So thank you for your work on that. And it's at a small scale, so we need to take those best practices and those learnings that we're getting in finding ways to prevent incarceration and to create a community that brings people out of homelessness and out of crime and out of drug use by fully integrating the local organizations. The police force needs to be a big part of it. Looking at the facilities, right? Looking at the jail, and I know that's a huge. I was actually just kind of reading over the article that you all republished on your site from the Daily recently, and I think that's a good way to look at it. And it needs to be really cohesive because it's it's not just about having more space for criminals. It's, most of the data suggests that if you do that, there will just be more criminals. It's all about getting those services. And so, I plan on, as I campaign, to continue to really survey the community and finding what our resources already are with private and nonprofit organizations, how they're interacting with the government, and then also how can they really coalesce and align to have a broader impact and to help lift some of those. Those are the biggest pain points for me, at least, and from what I'm hearing across the board for the city. So that's homes for all is one of the main pillars of my campaign, along with living wages for all and natural beauty for all. So, but homes is pretty quickly risen to the one that it needs the most attention the soonest, because it's something that is gonna make the quality of life and the safety and the security of our town higher for everybody, and needs to be addressed with urgency.
Since 2020, there have been extensive conversations about the issues of race, of policing, of the justice system, and you've touched on a bit of that, but how would you address equity in our justice system?
So I've been very lucky to grow up in a very inclusive home, and also been able to experience and have close friends and people I consider family across a pretty wide range of race and gender and sexual preferences and identity. And so that's something that I feel like I've naturally been able to really lean into, as far as really allowing everyone to be met with grace and respect, and to be communicated with transparently. And actually, just yesterday I did the naked bike ride. That's something that I like to participate in, which is also a rally for the pro-choice and LBGT or excuse me, LBGTQ community. And so that's something that I've I don't know, I guess it's my parents. I guess I give them credit, as well as just growing up in Bellingham, to where I've been able to see that and embrace diversity in a huge way. It's also a way that I look at environmentally, just the fact that diversity creates such good connections between people with different experiences and different skill sets and different traits and natural talents. And so something I've been able to do as a business owner as well is create those teams, create those organizations where you really use the diversity to your advantage, because it makes you stronger. And that's kind of the ethos behind it. Now, as far as individual practices and different individual regulations, that would be the lens I would be coming at to the conversations around building equity in our community, to make sure that, I've seen a lot of support of that, and I've been a part of it as much as I can. And so as mayor, that is an exciting piece, is because I can bring that compassion and bring that into the city government, to not only integrate it into the business of the city government, but also in integrating with other organizations, other business owners, attracting outside investment, things like that. Is something that will carry a lot of weight. Another thing I really appreciate about the Riveters Collective is the acknowledgement and the reverence for the tribal communities. And so that's a big part of it too, that since we're on their homeland, that's a really important part of making sure that that's respected and that's honored, and that those treaties and those relationships are kept at a very high standard. And so that's something that, it comes up in different ways. Obviously, as police force is definitely one that's been kind of on the hot seat in the last few years with the starting of Black Lives Matter and all that. And so, making sure that we're staying at the forefront of inclusivity, of as much social equity as we can, and making sure that it's a fair playing field for everybody is something it's really important to me, and I'd bring to the mayoral office and the city government at large.
Do you support a local minimum wage that's higher than the state wage?
I do. All my employees make well above minimum wage, even at the starting rate. I as an employer, I strive for creating living wages and having stable employees with comfortable lifestyles that actually support them is more important to me than just the amount of profit that comes out of my organization. I think it makes me very unique. It's something that really leans into human capital as something that is the most important resource in any community. I've been at several of the labor unions, speaking with them, finding out what their needs are, looking towards ways that we can collaborate to make sure that everybody has that living wage. And so I think that minimum wage and hourly wages is something that is actually quite limiting to our society. I would definitely support increasing the minimum wage. I would also push on business owners to adopt and work with other organizations like Sustainable Connections, who I've worked with a ton over the last decade, and know some of the founding members and the directors and some of the planning people that come out of that very well. And so really helping them optimize and resource local businesses so they can empower their employees. It really needs to happen in the city government. They're all burnt out and they've been over capacity for so long, and the city has not been able to bring in effective methods to really support their own employees. I mean, it blows my mind that the mayor makes over $200,000 a year, but they can't pay living wages to the public works employees. Like, what's wrong there? Something's wrong there, And so I see that value system is something that's got some flaws to it locally, but then the community around it actually embodies the values better than the government. And so that's where I think more of my private experience in this community can really properly represent the community in the government, and to steer that government in a way where not only the jobs of the government are much better and people be excited about working for the government, and we can get the employees we need, especially in the planning department and the police force, and for things that come down the pipeline from the state or the feds, we can fully support that, and we can be champions of that, showing that we can do even better than what the state is saying is the minimum.
What is your preferred plan and why for the post-point water treatment plants?
Woo! That's another big expensive project. I think that it's an infrastructure investment that needs to happen. There's quite a few that are on the plate in the next 4 and 8 years, and they need to be planned in a way that looks far reaching, not just, hey, let's meet today's demand or the 2030s demand, which is coming around the corner from an urban planning standpoint quickly. Where is Bellingham going to be in 30, 50 years? And I think that that's been something that people didn't expect, and they haven't expected to seeing the growth that is coming into our city. A big part of my platform and the ways that I see us really prospering come from expanding our ability to develop urbanly. The House bills coming down from the state of 110 that enable the middle housing and more urban infill is going to mean more demand on the sanitary and waste processing services. And so I think it's something that it needs to be a good hard look needs to be taken at it, and we need to make sure that we invest in a scale that that's going to meet that demand. So, you know, I not having all the plans across my desk is something that is, you know, I should have as I'm continuing to get ready and be in the position of the mayor. But I am very cognizant of, you know, the way that we're growing and the limits, the bottlenecks, including the infrastructure that are there, and making sure that they don't become bottlenecks again without a cohesive plan and a staged plan to make sure that we don't keep hitting capacity at these really important places. And you know, the jail's a perfect example of this. So is the waste treatment plants. So that would be my approach.
Thank you.
All right. Do you have any questions for us? Or,
I've got a couple.
okay.
So in what ways, you know, if I am chosen for endorsement, do you go out and do you activate your membership, and do you get into the community to help support the candidate that you choose?
So none of us on this endorsement committee are actually on the board. That would be a board decision, but in the past, yes, we usually have either we will try to get people to show up to your door knocking days, or sometimes we'll have our own door knocking days. In the
Great.
past, we've done various things. I don't know what the plans, since I'm not on the board, I don't know what the plans are this year, but definitely that is part of what Riveters tries to do, is get people involved, like out doing things, helping.
Great.
So
Yeah. So if I was selected for endorsement, I would look towards them to say, hey, how can we collaboratively work to push the campaign and to get the word out?
Mhm.
yes, and we would try to help push like any of your volunteer days that you had.
Great.
It's usually something that they do. So yeah.
I'm hoping to put together a Visions of Bellingham event that gets all the different communities, the 25 neighborhoods of Bellingham, to probably trackside. I think that's the best venue. But I'm gonna need some help supporting that. So this would be a great situation where we could do that and just kind of, you know, bring the democratic process into people's hands to make sure that we have this community driven vision and goals based on the community's needs versus, you know, just getting police reports and then trying to figure out what everybody wants from police reports, and meetings where really only people that are highly opinionated go versus the 80% of the community that are there and maybe not don't even have the time to go out at night on the you know, to the meetings. So I was putting my two boys to bed before this, so it's been a big day, but this has been a really great experience. So yeah, please reach out if you need anything else. Feel free to contact me. I'm pretty easy to find.
Okay, well, thank you so much. And yeah, I need to get, I think I have a couple kids to kiss actually right now. So
Fantastic.
thank you so much.
Thank you all. Take care.